that has a potential divide by 0 issue in it. So let me think. This is going to... So the scale is going to be the length of this vector. Alright. So what's going to happen here? This is basically, we have a screen space scalar divided by distance. So as distance gets larger, this object will get smaller. As distance gets larger, this thing needs to get bigger, right? Like, because it's an actual actor in the screen. So as the distance increases, that actor needs to get larger and larger and larger and larger. Because as we get closer, it should get smaller. So we should be distance divided by this. Supposedly. Though we had this was the distance scale from the camera with like the size of the screen, maybe? With our aspect ratio? I will have to test this. The other problem is that the field of view is changing how this thing looks as well. So it really is that the screen space scaler, we can make it bigger. The issue has to do with, because the field of view changes how that thing looks as well, so it's, we'll just get it close. Basically, that thing needs to be in the real UI. No questions asked on that. It needs to be half the size. Why would I have made it the opposite? Why would I have made it 2500 divided by that value? Because the further the thing is away, the smaller I wanted the object to be. Or is that scale just wrong? Like, this is get distance scale from camera. So if I went to this ball indicator, distance from screen, distance scale for that. Yeah, I think I've got the right thing. Why would I have made it smaller? This thing divided by distance? It just doesn't make sense. And that's about the right size for a normal play. When we zoom in, because it's actually not scaling that differently. It's that we want this object to be as we get closer, we want the object to actually get smaller, is what it seems like. So, and this is also, yeah, see, it's literally just the field of view. $2,500 divided by distance. So as the distance gets larger, the object would get smaller. We want it as we get closer. it gets smaller. So well, whatever. That's good enough. Okay, the next thing is the ball setup. Alright, so we're going to need to change the types of balls that we've got. So if we go to the arena level, let's go to gameplay, balls. Let's go ahead and make the blueprint function library. Okay, so we want an output which is going to be an entity, I believe. And what do we call this? This is a ball type. Is there no ball type? Doesn't look like it. Alright, so we want as the FOV gets smaller, this thing gets bigger. So as the field of view gets smaller, as the field of view gets larger, we're going to have more room. So it's going to be basically the diff is going to be the current FOV. So let's look at the difference. If the difference is negative, we need to be smaller. So we need to take this and go from, basically, the space is going to be 0 to 90, and we need to go from basically 0 to 1 to 2? 0 to 2? Okay, so it's basically, we want to take the camera field of view divided by FOV max. And then we have our FOV scale. So basically, we go from 0 to 1. Do that. So that'll be our FOV stuff. So that should theoretically, we should get our scale. As our FOV gets smaller, our ball pointer will get smaller. It should help on things. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. Let's see, what's the weather today? It's cold in my basement. That's excellent. So what I like about working down here is I don't need to run air conditioning or anything else, and it's always a nice constant freezing my butt off temperature. Perfect for all the build machines and everything else I operate. Very good. Looks like the build worked earlier. Well, this is a whole lot of code. Hello, friendly psychopath with psionic powers. Yeah, right now I'm just fixing a few things with the distance scale and the ball pointer so that it scales properly. And a whole lot of code. I mean, this is just one engineer working on Unreal 4, so it's not really a whole hell of a lot of code compared to other projects I've been on. I think the one that was the biggest mess out of everything was I'm working on Dragon Age Legends, which was a ActionScript 3 game back 2010. I think the battle, like it was an RPG game and it was written by 2 people, and then the designer. Do you have a solid state drive? That sure is just a little bit. Yes, it is. The problem is I edited the the global utils header, which everything's in. And yes, if I didn't have a solid state drive, I'd be tearing my eyeballs out. But yeah, there were things there that were just a mess. Like they didn't make an ability system or anything like that at first for this RPG game. So all the code and everything for damage calculation was just one big ass switch statement. It was just like, what the hell? Welcome back. Yeah, imagine a switch statement for every single damage type in a role playing game. So poison and everything else just gets all sorts of screwed up with damage calculations, because it'd be like, if this is poison damage, then calculate all this stuff, and of course it's all copy pasted. And the designer on that project decided he wanted to be involved in the code, so he actually went and like wrote code inside of some of this stuff, which was awful. And eventually we shipped him off to Lebanon, and we're just like, no, you can't touch this anymore, buddy. So let's make sure our field of view change works. A post regarding just never using switch statements and using dictionaries? No. Anytime anybody's saying like don't use something in a language, I usually just turn up like, really, like people are like, oh, go to is the worst thing ever, and be like, it has a very specific use. There are uses for these things. You just shouldn't use just because you can, you can use something else, just because you can use it doesn't mean you should. Let's see, it was the camera that I was looking at. So the close-up camera, yeah, I was going to change the field of view back to 30 and see what that did. Yeah. I really wish Java had GoTo, because then we could do fibers with virtual stacks, which would be nice for the multi-threading. Excellent, so that now works. Pretty easy to mess up GoTo, but exception handling is kind of the same. Yeah, probably everything has its place. The trick is actually making the proper use. Yeah, I hate how people abuse the hell out of exceptions in languages that use exceptions. Like, the worst thing ever is when you have a language like I think Java's the worst offender, where people will use exceptions when they really shouldn't. And then a good example is when we had a REST framework that basically these guys on Dragon Age Legends integrated a REST framework for their Java web server stuff, which they thought it was great because it didn't throw any exceptions. And what they didn't realize is that it did throw exceptions all the time. They just changed them all to runtime exceptions, which aren't declared. So basically, they would be typing out code that they would think wouldn't throw an exception, such as a telemetry call. And so what would happen is they'd have like this is literally what happened. They had our commerce buy function, which was on the server, and that would go, right to, your game database, and we had our commerce provider. Then we had our, I think this is bad design, but basically what we'd have is this commerce buy function, which would call which we call do purchase, which would call over to our commerce people and be like, hey, this guy just bought something, and return if they actually bought it. So then they'd be like, all right, report buy, bought X to Telim. So it'd go to the telemetry server and be like, all right, sweet, we bought an X, and then it would then write X to database. So I introduced a new web framework where normally this thing right here to telemetry would throw an exception. It would not throw an exception because what happened is if you don't catch the exception, it just keeps going up the stack until somebody handles it. So it'd be, okay, cool, commerce buy, do the purchase on the commerce provider. Yep, we took their money. Awesome, cool. All right, let's report to telemetry. Oh, the telemetry server call timed out and threw an exception. So, okay, cool. We're just going to go back up to the base exception handler, and we will activate our Google phone. And we'll just, log out an error. Telemetry server timeout. Cool. Wait, we forgot something. We forgot to actually give the person the thing they bought. So effectively what they wrote was something that stole people's money randomly. And there was no... Because in the log, it'd be like, oh, a timeout to the telemetry server. Ah, it's not a big deal. So it just randomly fucking stole everybody's money because they just abused exception handling and just ignored it. It's like, god damn it. So I'm pretty solidly on the side of use return codes and make sure that everything is not ridiculous. Yeah, oops. So, alright. Anyway, I guess if Adam is back and he wants to do a call, I will drop off stream and do call things, because that's important. Alright. Looks like that's gonna happen. So I gotta go do actual work in collaboration with other people, which is fortunate that we actually have some time to talk. So thanks for sticking around. I will be back on later, probably. But have a good one. Goodbye.